Red Eyes members, thank you for tuning in. It's good to have you along. We are continuing our fascinating discussion with Stewart Swerdlow from expansions.com. And I want to begin this segment to talk a little bit about Stewart's recent trip that he did over to France, and especially the area of Rennes-le-Château, this fascinating abbey, as it were. There's a whole background story to this, of course, and if you're not familiar with the entire subject of Rennes-le-Château, I suggest that you go on the web and do a search for it. I will have the correct spelling up on the information page for this program as well, so you can find it easy, of course. But there's so much background to all this. But in a way, this is connected, the way I see it, to the story of Jesus' mother Mary and the whole bloodline thing that is going on. It's interesting. Obviously, a lot of disinformation. It's religious connotations to the left and right, and it's a bit tricky so to sort this out. So what I'd like to do is to begin to ask you, Stewart, your take on all of this, and how and if your perception of it actually changed after you went down to France, and specifically to Rennes-le-Château.
Well, I found Rennes-le-Château to be the most fascinating place that we went to, and we went to so many places between Paris and Barcelona that were amazing historically, and which is just not taught in the public. And Rennes-le-Château, first of all, it's very difficult to get up to the top of that mountain on the very windy, scary road. But when you get there, it's quite an amazing place. Unfortunately, there is the church and there is the chateau. The chateau is now under private ownership, and he is not allowing anyone in there. But you can still go to the church, which has amazing symbolism. For example, when you walk into the church door, right there, you have a demonic entity who is holding up saints. And then you have a statue of Saint-Germain as a female instead of a man. And in the front of the church, you have Mary holding baby Jesus, and then you have another saint holding another baby Jesus facing each other. So the implication being that Jesus was perhaps a twin, and that Saint-Germain was perhaps a reptilian androgynous being. And the demon holding up the saints might be very well an indication that the Christianity was founded on reptilian demonic energies. Basically, Rennes-le-Château is symbolic. The priest Saunier was actually trying to tell people that everything is not what you think it is. That Christianity is based on something quite opposite of what people believe it to be. And of course, 105 years ago, when he created all of this, there was no media the way it is now. There was no television, so he had to create symbols that would be left behind, that would make a statement. And I think he did that rather well. Of course, I also think he had his own agenda financially, because he had tons of money, which no one knew where it came from. I personally feel he was being supported by a group that was trying to unmask Christianity for what it really was, and they paid him quite well, and he lived quite well, having many elaborate parties with wonderful food and wines and exotic things brought in. And he did have an affair with his housekeeper, and even may have had a child with her. And so he's quite a fascinating character, although he does have his quirks as well.
Right.
But he also used to go out at night, digging in the local area, in caves and other places, and he would come back before daylight with bags filled with something, and nobody knew what it was. The area is also known to have extensive dinosaur bones. So I thought that was quite fascinating, that there's this reptilian connection to the local area. It's just an amazing place. The cemetery has a skull and crossbones over the gate instead of a cross. privately, if you talk and you say, well, I know what this is and this is, then he opens up. And then he tells you, yes, there's many theories about this. And you have to, in France, no one offers any information. You have to prove yourself to them that you know more than they do, and then they open up to you.
Right, they don't want to look stupid, I guess, in front of the other people, so they have to...
Well, it's just that, I don't think it's that. I think it's more that they keep a secret.
Right.
And they won't share it unless they know you already know it.
Okay, well, that's interesting, too. So they only open up if you have a little bit of the knowledge already, in a way. That's interesting.
Yes, and I think, and that is why the Catholic Church, I even confirmed this with the local people, that Sonia was murdered. He didn't die a natural death. He was poisoned to make it look like heart attack. And then all his papers were burned. And things were destroyed. Church sent emissaries to remove things. So there's a lot that's missing that we may not be able to find, except if we go into the basement archives of the Vatican. So yes, it's quite a fascinating place. What I found even more fascinating was the church in Paris that contains the skull of Mary Magdalene.
Okay.
The whole story, and we even went to the cave where she was hiding in the south of France, which is quite a hike up a mountain. And then you get to a cave which has been converted into a church, and yet inside it is all stone and rock. And there is one of her bones there as well. I found that place to be a bit odd. I didn't like the atmosphere. It had the priests who were in charge of this place seemed to be very ritualistic. I felt very negative things happened in this cave over the centuries subsequent to her death. But what I found fascinating is that officially no one recognizes that Mary Magdalene and her daughter Sarah arrived in the south of France. It's not officially accepted.
Right.
Yet here are the bones, here are the churches.
And do you mention that again for me? Where was the skull of Mary Magdalene, allegedly?
This was in a church, in the basement of a church in Paris.
Okay. And do you remember what church it was, the name?
Yes, it was a Magdalene church.
Magdalene Church, okay.
Yeah.
And the bone fragments were in a cave further away then, I guess?
Further in the south of France.
Okay.
What people may not have known is that in Saint-Laury-de-la-Mer, which is on the southern coast of France, they reenact every year the arrival of Mary Magdalene and her entourage.
Okay.
And they've done this for centuries.
And
there is the Church of the Black Virgin, Sarah, who was the daughter of Mary Magdalene and the Christ. And there are her bones also there.
Right.
And this church was very interesting as well. There was a great sadness there. And what I find interesting is the misconceptions of the terminology. For example, the official Catholic Church does not want people to venerate Mary Magdalene because that would prove that she had children with Christ, right? So they call her a prostitute.
Right.
See? And the Black Virgin, which they say she was called the Black Virgin because of her dark skin. Well, they all had dark skin in the summertime. I think the black comes from her practice of the dark arts, or perhaps she was involved in some astral work.
I think there's even connections to alchemy, which actually derives from the word kemet or kem for black in Egyptian. So there's a slew of interpretations on why the different Madonnas are black, but definitely you're right. It's interesting.
Yeah, and so this continued right through the whole region, and people are not aware. Maybe in Europe is more aware that the south of France used to have a Hebrew kingdom, which was based on Magdalene and her descendants. And it was only up until the Merovingian time period that this was then dismantled and incorporated into the Illuminati territories.
Interesting. And I mean, Is it? Do you feel that it's difficult to get to kind of the genuine story? I mean, since Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and definitely, of course, the Da Vinci Code, that success of that book, it feels like potentially then a lot of people in the region or what have you, even further up, they would in some way they want to connect with the story and offer something in order to attain more visitors to their local church or something like that. Do you get that feeling from what you saw when you were there?
Well, my feeling, the books that you mentioned were purposefully out. And when a book is globally promoted like that, there's a reason.
Yeah, I know.
It's not that it was so well written, not that it was so well researched. It's presented as fiction, but it's presented as a precursor to the New World religion, which is being now installed on the earth. And this is what we realized when we got to Barcelona in Spain, and we visited a church that is being renovated called La Sagrada Familia, or the Sacred Family, and blatant reptilian symbols. The church is being filled with statues of gray aliens with large black eyes right there by the altar.
Really?
The outside of the church has huge reptilians crawling up and down the sides of the church. There are documents in stone placed on the outside that have enhanced words. For example, like the word slave is standing out from all the other words on the stone tablet. It's just amazing, the blatant symbolism of this church that's being built, which I feel is going to be one of the first for the New World religion.
Okay, really? And this was Sagrada Familia, was that right?
Sagrada Familia, which means the Sacred Family.
Ah, interesting. Okay. And of course, what you mentioned there is, once you begin to look at some of the, at least the Gothic cathedrals, you can really see many of the gargoyles prominently feature snake or dragon or even reptilian features, and that seems to actually be a very common theme in many of these cathedrals. Do you know why the reason that is? I mean, why would they externally project something perhaps that has to do with the hidden origins of Christianity then?
Well, the official reason is that they were designed to scare away evil spirits.
Right.
But the symbolism, the real symbolism is telling you that these are lower astral entities which are being invoked in the church rituals. And that's why they're part of the church. And what I also found quite disturbing is that in every church, from Notre Dame in Paris all the way down to Familia Sagrada, everyone along the way, in front of all of them, was female beggars. Now, why would a church of such high status allow a beggar to get money from people visiting the church?
Right.
It seemed like a professional staff from one end to the other.
Yeah, and it might have been.
I thought that was very disturbing.
Yeah. That's weird. And it's a bit of a, if you think of the whole, progress of how the church has been projecting itself, the image of the church, if you will. At daytime, the church has been related to, comfort and security, something that, a peaceful place where you can go and things like this. But yet, at the same time, we have this weird kind of the gargoyle imagery on the churches, and if we actually connect it with the fact that a lot of cemeteries are in the church, the churchyard basically, and if we think that we come to church at night, it becomes a very scary place. It feels like they have both components. They have the security and comfort and being a nurturing place, yet at the same time, it's a very kind of a scary and a horrifying place.
Yes.
And I feel that there actually is a level of mind control, if you will, going on there, or at least a control of a human being on an emotional level. Would you agree on that?
I absolutely agree. And one of the scariest churches that we went to was Notre Dame.
Right.
It was dark and cold and gargoyle statues, headless statues of saints, even go as far as to say evil. It was a very heavy energy. And then we found out that the Notre Dame Church is built over a Roman settlement, and the Roman settlement was built over an Egyptian settlement.
There you go.
And then the word Paris apparently came from the Egyptian Par Isis, for the place of Isis. And that's what Notre Dame is built over.
Very interesting.
Yes, quite fascinating. And then you look at the sequence of monuments from the Grand Arch to the Eiffel Tower to the Louvre and the Arc de Triomphe, and it's all on a ley line called the Rose.
The Rose Line.
The Rose ley line goes from Paris to Barcelona.
Right.
And so apparently in the summer solstice, when the sun rises, it goes right through this ley line, through the Arc de Triomphe, through the Eiffel Tower, right into the pyramid they built in front of the Louvre. So very, very ritualistic energies in Paris. Quite fascinating, actually.
I'm reminded of a recent article that stated that they did a dig that shows that Paris is about 3,000 years older than first thought, and they actually go back to about, let's see here, what does the article say, about 7,600 BC, way back. So I mean, it's as you say, it's a very ancient site, and one can understand if there have been settlements, rituals, what have you, going on in this area for a long time. One can understand that this has become an important node, if you will, energy-wise, if not for the the ruling structure of going back to the ancient world up to this day, right?
Yes, and it's also interesting to note, of course, in Paris, where Princess Diana was murdered,
right,
and by the 13th column, and not far from where she was murdered is a museum. In fact, it's just across the street. And in that museum is now on display a crystal skull, which French authorities have said is only from the late 1800s, that it's not old ancient. But we went to see that skull, and at first we weren't allowed. They said, no, you can't go. There's too many people, and it's too late. And so my Swiss friend, who is the guide, he said, well, we spent money now to come in here. We're not leaving till we see it. So they allowed us to go up to see the skull. But interestingly, when you go to see the skull in this museum, you must go through this dark, black, winding corridor like the yellow brick road in The Wizard of Oz, how it winds around and winds around in curves. And then finally you get to the skull, and it's placed in a position where you cannot get behind it. You can only see the front of it. You can't walk behind it. There's a wall around two sides of it.
Right.
Which I thought was interesting. And then after a few moments, the guard says you must leave immediately. They basically threw us out.
Okay. Huh. That's weird.
Yeah. So it was quite a negative experience. I felt this skull had very negative ritualistic energies in it.
It's interesting with the crystal skulls. There's a whole theory about that, of course, but you say that they had the official theory now is that it dates to about sometime in the 1800s. Is that right?
Well, this particular one, there's about 12 of them around the world.
Of course, yeah.
The Mitchell Hedges skull is considered to be the most perfect or original.
Right.
And the others are supposed to be copies of it.
And I mean, there's is a theory that this actually goes back to Maximilian von Habsburg when he was emperor of Mexico. That he found allegedly, or at that point were in the possession of probably one original one, but then potentially he, together with a few other people who were working within his court, if you will, were actually potentially doing these frauds or fake skulls in order to kind of flood the market and make a lot of money on that. That's an interesting theory, of course, but I definitely think that there are some genuine, if you will, real one out there, of the crystal skulls.
Yes, and most people don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, some people say that there is a information stored. There is a resonance between human and that particular crystal. Have you heard about that?
Yes, yes, I have. In my opinion, that Mitchell Hedges skull that was allegedly found in Belize is the most fascinating with the most information. But this one in Paris was odd because it has a flat bottom. It wasn't like a real skull. It had a flat bottom, as if it was resting. It was supposed to rest on top of something else. And the eye sockets, the teeth, they're not human. They're not. Some people say they look like monkey skull, but it wasn't that either. To me, it was something totally different.
Hmm.
You know, it was a very, and then it haunted people in my group for days after, in their dreams, and it was in their heads. It was like bombarding us.
Hmm.
It was not a good thing.
That's interesting. And I mean, logically, if it is true that information can be stored in these skulls, I mean, if we think about it, it actually could be, let's say that this is a skull that has been involved in ritual or even ritual sacrifice, what have you. This could actually be information that is, or in way of a frequency that is embedded in and preserved in the skull, and when people approach it or see it or whatever, this is something that they actually pick up on, and then, you know, obviously later on that this might come out as a nightmare or something like that, you know.
Yes, yes, very true, very true.
Interesting. And I mean, if we go back a bit more and talk about the whole, Jesus and Mary thing going on, what I've been able to pick up from it so far is that the Priory of Sion, of course, in relationship to the Merovingian bloodline, have been trying to, push this agenda. They have been pushing this agenda with letting us know through fiction works and through documentaries here and there, through other material, that there actually is a bloodline of Jesus and Mary, and that this is related to the righteous king and or queen, if you will, and that this is a whole. It's a very interesting story here, but it's also a very dubious story. Do you have a take on this and where this potentially might be going in the future?
Well, and I wrote about that in my Blue Blood, True Blood book, where, yes, the figure of Christ, who was really Emmanuel, did have an affair. I don't believe they were married, but I think he had an affair with Mary Magdalene and had 3 children with her. And Peter was very jealous of Mary Magdalene. And this is depicted in the Last Supper painting, where the red-headed person sitting next to Christ is not a saint, it's Mary Magdalene.
Right.
And you can see Peter looking at her with contempt and almost wanting to kill her. And she feared for her life and the life of her children, and she fled to the south of France with her daughter and one of the sons and the brother of Emmanuel, who was Joseph of Arimathea. And then the Christ figure, did not die on the cross, but was a staged event. He was drugged to look like he was dead. He was taken off the cross, revived, and sent to what is now Srinagar in Kashmir with the oldest son. And this is documented in the history of Kashmir, and even in the cemetery of Srinagar is a section protected by someone there who, with a tombstone, is of Christ, and says he lived to be 117 years old. And in France, Mary Magdalene and the daughter created an entire dynasty, and Joseph and the youngest son went to Britain, and bringing artifacts there, which are supposedly under the throne in Buckingham Palace, and supposedly gives the Windsors the legitimacy to the throne.
There you go.
It's a very, very complicated, long story, and of course I'm cutting it short here and there to make to get the information out.
Right.
But the other interesting thing is that the Srinagar part, the son of Christ, who traveled, who had children there, and Christ and brought this new religion to Japan.
Really?
Yeah, so it's quite extensive, both in Asia and Europe, and the Templars knew this. The Templars found this out when they excavated ruins in Jerusalem. But you know, the whole story of Christ was rewritten by the Piso family in Rome when Christianity became an official religion.
Right.
Of Rome, and so it was mixed with the paganism, kind of a bait and switch, so that the Roman population could accept this new religion that could then tie in to the ritualistic belief system of the Romans.
Right, exactly. It was a merger, almost like a mutual agreement of a mix between the more older gods, if you will, and this new deity that they wanted to bring out, right?
Yes, correct.
And I mean, you mentioned then that in a way this might, all the theories that are going around, that this might actually validate then, if you will, that the Windsors actually are of this bloodline. If this is true or whatever, do you think that that they actually will unveil this in some way, or try to push this in some way?
Yes, and this is why Diana was murdered, where she was murdered, and then her body is basically encased in a shrine on an island in England, waiting to be worshipped. They will come up with genetic proof that all of them are descendants of Jesus, and making them holy rulers of the earth.
There you go. And is there any truth to this, or is this all bollocks in order to rule the planet, basically?
Well, it's been let's say, enhanced in certain places. Yes, it's true that he had children, and yes, the children had children in Europe and spread out across the continent. But all of that's been diffused with many intermarriages and subsequent events. Basically, what they will do is they will take the DNA resonance from the Shroud of Turin, which has recently been re-verified by scientists at Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and they will use that clone that they've already created as a proof of the second coming of Christ. And they will match the DNA of this person to the DNA on the shroud, and obviously if it's a 100% match, who is going to say it's otherwise? And then he proclaims the New World Order as his new holy empire, and installs a New World religion.
But you're saying that this will be the clone?
Yes, yes.
Really?
Yeah, it's not a natural being. It's something that was manufactured.
I've heard a little bit of theories here and there that Prince William is actually going to be kind of unveiled, if you will, as the new quote-unquote Messiah. Have you heard about that?
No, that's a new one on me.
Really? Okay. Well, I mean, if you think about it, that the new kind of Holy Trinity, because of the mother of Diana, then the mother Diana, of course, and then you have Prince Charles, who is related to this the royal Jesus bloodline, and then the consequent son to that is that they're gonna bypass Prince Charles as the King of England and go straight to Prince William, and when he's 30 years old at 2012. He's going to be brought in some way,
Well, that can make sense, and I'll tell you why. Because not long ago, a woman in Norway said that after Princess Diana died, she channeled her, and Princess Diana told this woman that that Diana had been the grandmother of Jesus.
Quote-unquote Messiah. Have you heard about that?
No, that's a new one on me.
Really? Okay. Well, I mean, if you think about it, that the new kind of Holy Trinity, because of the mother of Diana, then the mother Diana, of course, and then you have Prince Charles, who is related to this the royal Jesus bloodline, and then the consequent son to that is that they're gonna bypass Prince Charles as the King of England and go straight to Prince William, and when he's 30 years old at 2012. He's going to be brought in some way,
Well, that can make sense, and I'll tell you why. Because not long ago, a woman in Norway of
right.
Mary.
Hmm.
So yes, that could make sense then, because William would be then the son of Diana, who was the grandmother of Jesus.
Right, right.
So yes, it could make perfect sense.
We'll just have to see how they try to sell this on us, eh?
Well, I tell you, when they use this genetic testing, what? Everything now is DNA,
Of course, yeah.
And so who can deny the matching of the DNA?
Right.
But of course they can alter things. They take DNA from one body and they infuse it in the cell of another body, and then that cell replicates with the new DNA. So it's just whatever they present to the public, and the public doesn't understand how this is all done.
And what is going to be important if any of this actually ever actually do happen is, of course, to ask yourself, what does it matter? What okay, let's say even Jesus existed, right? And then all of this consequently happened, and now we have the son of the son of the son of the etc. And now we have this new Messiah that they're going to bring forth. But I mean, it doesn't really change our way of life. Doesn't change me personally in that sense. It's more like, because I personally, at least, am not interested in worshiping another deity or another human being or what have you. It doesn't change anything if you think about it. Right?
But there's the catch, and that is when this is implemented, like Bush says, either you're with me or you're against me.
Right.
If you don't worship him, why? What are you? Are you a demonic entity?
Right.
So yes, people who don't accept, they will be punished.
It potentially could be another kind of religious purging and a religious war at that point.
Like another Inquisition. Yes, absolutely.
Oh, that's interesting, and again, I mean, it's the world is a weird place, and all kinds of weird things could happen. And what I see, kind of the backdrop to why something like this would potentially be kind of rolled out there, so to speak, is that if we look back into history and look at how they previously have kind of announced different deities in order to be a symbol for the age, what have you. I feel that Jesus at this point represent the age of Pisces, etc. And if we now are to be unveiled to this new deity of the age of Aquarius, we might well be in a time like that at this moment where they are trying to at least introduce a new religion. Now, of course, we've heard about the new world religion talk for some time now, and this might be the time for them to implement it. Who knows? We'll see.
But before that happens, they will also create a staged alien invasion.
You think so?
So to create massive fear globally, and everyone would have to unite under one government in order to fight this invader.
Yeah, and I mean that can actually bring us kind of into a little bit of another subject that I did want to talk with you about, and that is some of the recent UFO sightings in relationship to this, and of course, especially in the UK, and interestingly enough, around the summer solstice, there was kind of a slurry of UFO sightings in the UK. What's your take on that, Stewart?
Well, I have actually told years ago on my website that this would happen. I said, when the global conventional media starts to give serious stories about UFOs and space objects as being real, that's when the staged alien invasion is being prepared. And that's what we're seeing happen. Not only in Britain, where airline pilots are reporting huge UFOs hanging over the coast in broad daylight, but recently in a town in Northern Territories of Australia, the whole town was literally attacked by UFOs.
Yes.
Where the people found them just hanging over their homes.
Yes.
Just a few meters in the air. Broad daylight again. And we have been seeing this globally, where official reports of UFOs are being now broadcast on the official news. And without ridicule. Years ago people made fun of them, and they're insane and all these things. Now not. Now it's taken officially as seriously.
And that is interesting. That's why I like, because that story that you mentioned, I remember linking up that on redicecreations.com. UFOs invade NT Town. The headline says this is small territorial community in the outbacks, as it were. And just as you say, I think it's very interesting just because of the fact that there is, there's hundreds of reports, occurring, maybe not every day, but certainly every week. There's so many different reports all the time. MUFON, we have other organizations that are tracking this, of course, but then all of a sudden they kind of cherry pick a few ones and say, and as you say, Stewart, they don't ridicule it in the media. They just actually kind of report on it in a very decent, balanced manner, to some degree at least, and that is interesting. Then a red light goes off, for me at least.
Yeah, and recently the former governor of Arizona said on the news publicly that yes, the big UFO that was seen over Phoenix in 1997 was extraterrestrial.
Right.
So if the governor says this, what will the public say? They'll say, well, it must be true.
Right. Well, of course, and it feels to me that there is human elements obviously involved in this. But would you say that all the crafts that are being seen are human created? Do you think so?
Yes, as I said for many years, over 90% of what's seen now is from here. Yes, there are aliens out there. The universe is teeming. But in recent years, there's a very tight control over what's in the atmosphere, and only certain craft are allowed, and most of what we see is either craft that has been built here and or holographic images from Bluebeam Project that are projected out to see public reaction.
Right. And we talked about Project Bluebeam before on this program, of course, but that's kind of the I don't know how that actually was released, but allegedly that's a leaked protocol in regarding to holographic technology in order to stage an alien invasion, basically.
Yes, and also to promote New World religion by projecting religious figures in the sky.
Right. That's correct, and that's a bit of a kind of a tricky connection there. I mean, what would you think that they would plan to do? Would they, at the same time as they kind of unveil, UFOs, what have you, in relationship to that, they would, project images of who, Jesus or different deities around the world, depending on what religion they are at that area? What do you think?
Yes, yes, but what's even more fascinating is just a few weeks ago, the Vatican released that article. The title was "Aliens Are Our Brothers."
Yeah, I know.
And so now the Catholic Church is saying, yes, God has created many alien civilizations, and they are part of His kingdom.
Yep.
They are our brothers, and we should accept them.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I mean, one can speculate, of course, but do you think that they would go to the full extent of actually, letting us see some entity of some kind? I mean, at this point, we don't know. That could even be cloned or created artificial masked holographic projection of something, totally different or not real then, in that sense?
Well, when the staged alien invasion occurs, they will not show who or what they are. It will be an unknown group. However, there will be another group that will be brought in that will be a savior race that will come to rescue us from this terrible attack, and that race will then be shown as the reptilian race.
Really?
And they will show genetically that we are part of them, and they are our ancestors, and that basically they created us, and they're like our masters. And that's when the second coming of Christ comes, and He proclaims everything His holy empire.
And I mean, because that's an interesting theory that you mentioned there about intervention. We had Lloyd Pye on with us last time on the radio program. We talked about the fact that we might be, genetically engineered from another race. Do you see that that's a possibility at this point?
Oh yeah, I knew Lloyd a long time ago. He's very, very intelligent, has very good information.
Yes.
And yes, in my Blue Blood book, I write about how we are a synthesis of reptilian and human,
So these deities that you're talking about, what they're going to unveil potentially, actually is true then? True.
It's true, yes. However, the manner in which it's presented is not true.
Right.
See, it's a twist of the truth.
Yeah. And that's very interesting. And we talked a little bit with Lloyd about that, of course, also. But it's like we have this schism within ourselves, as you mentioned. We have the org complex or the reptilian brain, and it feels like a lot of people are working on that level more than they are working on their human level in a way, and that can actually classify them to some degree as another species, if you will, if you follow me.
Well, the reptilian brainstem is where much of the mind control and programming is centered.
Yeah.
Because it's instinctual and goes with immediate reactions rather than thought processes. So very often when they try to program someone, they will scar the reptilian brainstem so it will swell and contain more information. And this is all, another reason why people have so many back problems and neck problems, and why there is a conflict within each person between left and right hemisphere of the brain. It all goes back to the original mix of genetics between reptilian and human. And that's why it says in the Bible, let us make man in our image. It's plural.
Right.
It was a group effort, and if you look at how a human is developing in the womb, for the first few weeks, it's an androgynous reptilian. And then the mammalian characteristics and sexuality differentiation take hold. So it's following the sequence of genetics as they were entered.
Right. That's interesting because, of course, mainstream science mentioned that this is a relation to our origins that has to do with the animal world, so to speak, that we come from that, and we can see the different stages of development of how the human being has developed, like a micro version, if you will, of our evolution then in a way. And that's also, of course, a very interesting theory. But what you mentioned there is, that's also very interesting. So you're saying that we're kind of going through what we have inherently in us in relation to what mixes of species we are then, right?
That's correct.
Wow, interesting. And in regards to time frame, to what we talked about when potential staged UFO invasion or alien invasion is to begin, do you have an idea about that time frame?
It's already in process. All of this information now on the news is part of the whole process. So we're already in stage one.
And this will have to pan out over many years, right? Or can this happen overnight?
I think it can escalate rather quickly. And I've heard various information that even this year it could develop quickly. But certainly, my opinion is within the next 2 or 3 years it will be quite known.
My guess is that they will work, as they do on so many other occasions, they work very prominently on kind of key dates, the timing, and even the place of certain events are very of a big importance, I guess, right?
That's very correct. They're very big on symbolism and numbers and places, and yes, they will make it look very, very intriguing and mysterious.
And I can't veer away from the idea that all of this actually in some way is connected with the 2012 date, especially because of the fact that this has to do with the ancient Mayan calendar. This has to do with dating time, new beginnings, new millennium. There's so many different components that are coming together and kind of converging over this date. Of course, we can just speculate at this point, and we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves and assume things here. But we'll just have to see. But for now, it feels like it's definitely interesting. When we take all of these different theories into account and think what might be upcoming in the years ahead here.
Yes, it's going to be quite a roller coaster ride for a bit of time.
That's right.
And so I urge people to work on themselves and gain control of their own minds.
Exactly. Well, that's a very important point, because I feel that, you know, you need to stay, if a lot of these things begin to happen, a lot of kind of upsetting news, what have you, depending on what, you know, background in religion you have, if you don't have it at all, whatever, this could be, you know, a very tumultuous period, especially if something like this happens. But the main an important thing, I guess, in a situation like that is to kind of be balanced and keep your own center, and you know, no matter what happens externally, one has to remember that that is only externally. No one has actually, you know, interfered with you, you know, and your entity on that level, because I feel that in many cases the manipulation is going on has to do with these kind of things. It's about a trauma or a big event that shakes things up in a big way, and that consequently sways a lot of people, you know, and they lose track of even themselves, you know, in a way.
Absolutely true. And I would tell people that when they watch the news and they see things unfold, that instead of taking it as truth or being upset by it, view it as a scripted show for your benefit.
Right. Well, it's kind of a healthy distance from it all. You sit from the outside looking in, you have a nice perspective on it, right? And then you can, you know, you can be more calm about it and judge it or analyze it, I guess, in another way, right?
Correct. And the best way is to go within your own self and say, what does this mean for me? What do I need to change within myself to correct this? Yeah.
I want to touch upon one final thing before we begin to round things up here for this time, and that has to do with the all the bees disappearing, and I reckon that you had a pretty interesting take on this. That this actually is something that is cyclical. Tell us about this.
Well, you know, I live in an area that is very natural. We have only vineyards, forests, natural beaches, etc. And the people we deal with grow only organic food, and we get organic honey, raw organic honey from a natural organic bee farmer. And so we were discussing this with him a while ago, and he was comical about it. He said, how silly. He said, every few decades the bees do this, and it's not a big deal. And he said, first of all, only the commercial bees, which have been genetically altered, have vanished. All of the organic bee farms are totally intact, not a problem. And so it's the altered genetics of these bees that go into cycles every few decades to basically vanish, destroy themselves, so that a new batch can be created and installed. And basically, then the government takes this disappearing bee story and makes it like a global warming story into a horrendous implication, so that they can raise the price of food and remove foods from the market and blame it on the bees who vanish.
And of course, what I feel at this point that is very important is that they're trying to bring in the GMO agenda in correlation with this. So I think that they're using this, if it is true what you're saying, that this is happening on a cyclical basis, either they have knowledge about it or they don't. Either way, they're taking advantage of the situation and trying to bring in.
Exactly, and they know when the cycles occur, and they know when to bring it to the media.
Yeah. And
as I tell you, the organic bees are still here.
Right.
None of them left.
That's very interesting, and it's definitely worth thinking about, because it begins to pop up here and there. And I mean, I could certainly see it. I mean, I got to say it. I've never seen so few, especially the what do you call them? The not the bees, the other ones. Oh, I can't think of the wasps. Right, thank you. I mean, usually there are a lot around in summertime in Sweden, but I don't think I've seen one this year, actually.
You know, I agree with you. Because I have here sometimes some wasps that live in the attics of the garage or something like this. And this year there's hardly any, but I see more bees than ever before.
You do? Okay.
Yes. In fact, I have a ravine behind my house. I was standing there the other day and I thought, my goodness, I better move away. All these bees are flying around here.
Right. Well, that's good, and I guess then in a way that might be because you're in that area that nurtures, or has organic bee farming. I know that we had a guy here locally who actually lost his entire business. He were into the honey business, as it were, and he lost his entire yield of bees, as it were, and he went out of business basically. And we can certainly see that up here, and there are a few bumblebees are around, a few of those, but at this point not many bees at all, and probably not one single wasp. It's very peculiar, but I think it's important to take this into account and to kind of help calm oneself in a way in regards to a situation like this, that this necessarily doesn't mean that everything is lost and over when it comes to our food supply or whatever. This might be because of a natural cycle, and if we just have a little patience, this might be returning,
Well, I invite everyone to come here and buy large vats of organic raw honey. We have plenty.
Nice. Very, very nice. And we'll just have to keep track on this and so much more, of course, that is going on, and a lot of things are obviously going down at this point. I mean, we have even among all of this, the food shortage, the increased gas prices. There's
Yes.
rumors of war with Iran, what have you. But again, I think it's important to kind of to run things off for this time here, is to leave with that idea or that image that many of these things that are going on is in a way kind of helping, if you will, to keep you in that fear mode, in that fear state all the time, and to continuously focus on it with that background. That's the most volatile thing one can do, and one needs to, of course, be aware of it. That's always important, but then yet again have that perspective to it and have that distance to it, and keep patient and don't be so easily upset about it all, right?
Exactly correct, and remember that you can change every bit of it.
And especially if one considers what we talked about in the first segment. And I know that you have a few products out there in relation to the hyperspace language. Isn't that right, Stewart? Tell us about that.
Yes. If you go on my site, expansions.com, and you will see all of the books that we have that explain all of this information. We have DVDs for those of you who like to watch instead of read. I invite everyone to come to the seminars that we have posted up on the website. Read my daily news updates, write into the Q&A and whatever questions you have. All the information that you want is there. If it's not there, you ask and we give it to you.
Perfect. The website again is expansions.com. Do check it out. And thank you again, Stewart, for coming on the program and sharing your very interesting perspective. We always enjoy it, and it's fascinating talking with you. So thank you very much for coming on.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate it. You're a very wonderful host.